Hi, I'm Joy Cherrick and welcome to my channel. Today I'm talking about how I use Ambleside Online for my first grader. He's actually my first grader that I've used Ambleside Online with. Most people with large families that I've spoken with, or even just multiple children, don't use it like exactly. So I'm just going to explain how I use it and also what I do for our first graders curriculum, given that I also have other children that I'm juggling. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to get more videos about nature study, family life, and Charlotte Mason homeschooling. So I'm going to break this into two different sections. So first, I'm going to start talking about skill work, and then we're going to move into the enrichment piece. So bear with me. I'm going to work through it pretty quickly so that you can get a good overarching view. And then please leave a comment if I've left something out or you'd like me to expand in a later video. So I'm going to go through each of the essential skill work elements in order of importance. So I start with reading. I use this book religiously with all of my kids. I'm actually already having our our kindergartner go through this already since our first grader is done with it. But then after they're done with this book, we do the Bob books. And I really love these. I think they're really great. And right now, my first grader is still kind of in the first kind of set. And I don't see that as a huge problem. I do have other students who have been further along at this point. But really, when you look at really any of the developmental spectrums, I've seen a lot of times the chunk between first and third grade is its own kind of sliding scale. So knowing that, okay, I want him to be a certain level by the time he gets to third grade, because there's a giant chasm of a jump into fourth grade. So he's just going to be kind of moving along, which leads us to his next subject, which is math. And I love the Light Blue series by Math Mammoth. It is really, really friendly for a large family because it's all self-contained, and it does the spiral thing where it keeps repeating stuff as you go and make sure that it has the review worked in. And for my first grader who's not reading yet, I sit on the couch and have that student and then another student sit next to me. And we really go through the reading. So right now he's doing a lot of just reading to kind of strengthen his reading skills. And then he's doing his math. And I spend probably about an hour at the very beginning of the day with my first grader, because that is such a foundational year for that student. And because that student is not reading yet, like really fluently, he's reading, but not fluently, I want to make sure that he's able to be more independent next year, because I'm going to have another first grader next year that I'm going to need to really help on that end. So I really, really focus on reading fluency. So that moves us over to what we do for copy work. This is Pen Time Manuscript Book 2, and this is by Rod and Staff. I just got it on Amazon. I'll leave a link below. This works really well for where this student is not fully reading full books yet, but also needing the just copying letters and single words. And really, this is a good transition between copying just letters and then he'll later do just sentences, and we'll just copy one sentence a day. But this book really seems to be a good transition for that. That moves us to our narration journal. So my older students actually keep a journal, and I started it in first grade because, especially with the boys, I found that it was more difficult for them to tell back what happened. And I was getting really frustrated. So I found it much easier to just ask them to draw a picture about one of the stories that we read, and I just let them choose. So one day we read Make Way for the Ducklings, and then he said that this was the one he was the proudest of. He said that he traced this, and then he drew the little ducklings. So he really enjoyed this particular story, and then of course was really proud of the drawing. And then I wrote what he said, which was Mr. Mallard is leaving, which to me is a great narration. I'm very happy with that. And then this is another example. This is from Aesop's fable, The Lion and the Mouse. And this is the lion, this is the mouse. And again, he chose to draw this picture. And he said, the lion is trapped, the mouse is biting the rope. So again, this was his narration after he drew the picture, and then he explained the picture to me. So this has been actually a really beautiful way for us to track what we've been reading, especially in the early years. But I'll show you the other narration journals that I have for my older students. So this moves us into kind of our fun stuff. Right now this year we're working on whittling, and I really love this book, Twigs and Branches, and it just gives us a few different projects that we can do, and it kind of helps us get started. And then I recommend this Opinel brand. Again, you can get these on Amazon. And then it has the rounded tip, and then the blade has to be sharpened almost every use. And we got the sharpener for it at Ace Hardware. And then it has a nice lock. And I give this to all my students when they turn 6 years old. And that leads us to our nature study. I will leave a link to how I do nature study with small children down below. We watched a video of the sun when we were studying the solar system, the stars, and the skies. And then this is basically his narration from that. And my students are not as detail-oriented as I've seen some students be. But you can see this is just part of one thing that we're learning. This is a training program here. We're not in it for perfection. And then finally, his last enrichment, outside of the things that we do in co-op, and I cover that in our morning time video, is the Hoffman Academy piano. He's on Unit 1, and I highly recommend it. It's really a well done program. If you know about solfege and training to the ear, Hoffman does a really good job on that. So that kind of moves us into our morning time and how I structure that, but I'm actually going to do another video about that. So I'm going to leave a link to that once that goes live below, and you can check out how I structure and plan our morning time with all these different ages and stages. But for now, just know that's kind of the basics for our first grade. And then we do, like this is, what is his name? Robert Louis Stevenson's Child's Garden of Verses. I will incorporate different selections, like poetry selections from AmblesideOnline Year 1 to make sure that he's at least getting those different poets for memory work, even if we're on a different poet, because I want to make sure that our younger students are getting that kind of rich literature in the early years. And we actually have in our morning time a loop, and I call it the nursery rhyme loop, but it incorporates a bunch of different literature. So I've kind of used the My Book House series as my hack for that because it's a really strong literature and it incorporates a lot of really great poetry. So I will loop through my book house 1, 2, and 3 for my kind of kindergarten first graders, just to make sure that they're getting those amazing fairy tales. Even if we're kind of ahead, like my 4th grader, she's already read all the fairy tales in our house. So I'm just trying to make sure that everybody else is getting that on their way up in that loop. So that's kind of all for now. You can check out my other video about morning time, and please let me know if I've left anything out that you're really wanting to know about. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.